Are you tired of using mouse and keyboard to play games, but you don't want to use a controller? Well, I have the product for you. It combines your mouse, keyboard, and controller together into one single unit. It's called the DarkWalker ShotPad. It's one of the weirdest controllers I've ever seen, if you even want to call it a controller. Today, I just want to give you a brief review of my experience with this device so far. Starting at the price point of $50, the DarkWalker ShotPad is a touchpad game controller designed specifically for first-person shooters, FPS games. It features a large, touch-sensitive surface that allows for more precision, control, and movement in games. The ShotPad can be connected to your computer or gaming console by a USB, and it's compatible with Windows, PS4, and PS5, Xbox One, and S and X. What makes this controller stand out is its programmable buttons, macro, and a relatively large touchpad surface. These features came with some very unique advantages I wasn't expecting, and with that of course came with some disadvantages as well. My first thoughts upon opening was that the touchpad design could provide a more precise and controlled experience compared to a conventional game controller, and the customizable buttons and macros could allow for more of a effective and streamlined gameplay. But I really need to get in there and see it in action. Since this is primarily advertised as a first-person shooter controller, I started my testing there, and I can say this thing performs very well with most FPS titles. I'm not entirely sold on the touchpad, but it does get the job done. After spending a couple of days using this device, I feel like what holds this device back the most is definitely the touchpad. It's definitely half-baked into this device. It feels like they just ripped one off of a laptop trackpad and put it on a controller. It's not terrible, it's certainly not great. I think it ultimately depends on the game you plan on using it with. While some may find it a good substitution for mouse in some games, it really lacks sensitivity and control for gun recoil. You can definitely be very accurate with a touchpad, but you lose a lot of the ability of being able to pull down with a joystick or a mouse for high recoil guns in first-person shooters. The motion of swiping down on a touchpad is not the greatest idea for weapon control. You'll have the best experience with a touchpad if you just pick games with minor recoil on weaponry, or just weapons with the least amount. As I said, the keyboard functionality is the other main part of this controller, and I have to say, I really dig it. The controller has 25 buttons, but with the function key unlocks an extra 17 buttons. You are left with 42 keys in total. It's a little overwhelming to have so many buttons at your fingertips at once, but it leaves you ready to play any game. The only downside is definitely having to click the function key for certain button combinations. For an example, the top part of the D-pad is 1, and if you click the function key, it will change it to 5. This is extremely annoying when you're trying to quickly swap to a different gun. Hitting the function key and then up on the D-pad isn't exactly what I would call intuitive, even after getting a bunch of time in-game on this. Comparing this to a keyboard where you just move your hand up and hit the 5 key. This function is just a tad annoying. You can of course set up your in-game keyboard around this problem, but it's not always convenient to do so. Even without rebinding keys, you are able to get a lot of different commands mapped without the use of the function key. The single joystick acts as your WASD movement keys. The joystick is an effective way to save real estate on the controller itself. It provides you with all the directional movement you need. I honestly think it's a great idea for your primary keys. Like what I said with the trackpad, you are losing some precision with the joystick movement, but I do think it's a happy compromise for the comfort of a controller. Now, let's get into how this device actually does while playing some games. I tried Apex Legends, as this was the game that the controller was actually advertising for. The DarkWalker was actually quite fun to use with Apex. It takes a little bit of time to get my settings to my liking and learning the button layout. But after a few minutes, I started to get it under control. I was able to pick up some kills in BR and some kills in Deathmatch as well. Now, I won't say my aim is anything special with a trackpad, but it gets by. There wasn't much chance of me winning any of those games, but I was having fun with it. And the same thing can be said for the rest of the games I tried. In short, the FPS games, I can't say that the DarkWalker will replace your keyboard and mouse or controller, but it was pretty neat to test nonetheless. After the FPS games, I wanted to test the waters and play some more casual games where aiming and movement don't have to be so precise. So I tried some top-down shooters and survival games. This is where I really think the DarkWalker shines. The added comfort of playing on the controller really adds to the laid-backness of some of the casual games that I tested. It's amazing for the games that don't have dedicated controller support. Single-player games just don't require the finesse of competitive multiplayer titles. If they just spent a little longer working on the functionality of the trackpad, I feel like this device would be 1,000 times better. The keyboard especially tries very hard to be everything a keyboard is. Yet with controller sizing, you cannot just practically get there without having some awkward button combinations, and that is why keyboards exist. The system they came up with to get multiple keys on a controller, I would say works pretty well. Again, the only downside is you're restricted to a smaller amount of buttons. I also wanted to mention I did try this on Xbox as well. And it did work, but it only worked with games that supported mouse and keyboard as well. But overall, this is a really cool controller. It was pretty fun to use and get used to. I think if you definitely have the money to shell out, this is something you definitely should look at buying. If you have some casual games that don't support controller. This brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed my review and my overall opinion of the controller. This was an awesome product to test, and I did have a lot of fun with it. Now, again, if you guys have any questions about this product, please leave a comment below and have a good one.